Hey everyone, welcome back to Be Not Afraid. I'm Carob Marcelle, and I'm so excited to speak with Wenyuan Parker today. Wenyuan was one of the amazing people who went against um, ethnic studies and who broke it down so that people could understand. And I just wanted to bring you guys on and let you kind of hear from her. Please feel free to write in the comments. Respectfully, obviously, let us know what you think, ask any questions. I'm just super excited. This has been a while coming in, so I'm really excited to have you here. So thank you when you on. Just want to get that right.
Hey, thanks, Carrie. I'm so grateful to be here. Can you hear me?
I can, no problem. And you look great. So
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just happy to be here. Finally, it's been a long time coming since we last spoke about ethnic studies and how it's making inroads, not just in progressive states, but also in states like Utah. And it's been a long time. I've been working on ethnic studies and other forms of indoctrination in public schools in California for about 6 years now. And I actually live in Georgia. I'm running for school board here in my little corner called Monroe County. So I'm running for school board against an establishment incumbent that is um, that is in my city district. My district is kind of progressive, even though my county is conservative. So I'm sure we can get into that more later on in the chat.
you moved from California, or have you lived in Georgia the whole time that you were fighting what was going on there?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I have not lived in California, even though I work on a lot of things related to California. I started taking on the progressive kind of the orthodoxy in California in 2020, and that given that was COVID, so I didn't have to move to California to do that ballot initiative campaign called No on Prop 16 in the state of California. Uh, Basically, in 2020, the state legislature introduced a measure called Proposition 16 to repeal California's statewide constitutional ban on race-based affirmative action called Prop 209. And they did a very expensive campaign. All the A-listers from Kamala Harris to Governor Newsom, everybody in Hollywood and Silicon Valley went for the repeal. They endorsed the repeal, and we did a grassroots campaign that was outspent by the opponent at a ratio of 14-1, and we won 57.2% of the votes. So over 9.65 million Californian voters agreed with us that the state should not discriminate against or grant any preferential treatment to any individual or group on the basis of race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin in public education, public contracting, and public employment. So long story short, I was able to do the campaign as its executive director while being in Georgia. I've been in Georgia since 2019, and I have never envisioned myself as a local school board candidate, but here I am.
What got you interested in the first place, and why did you pay attention to California?
I got recruited by a number of civil rights advocates and champions like Mr. Ward Connolly and Professor Gail Harriet to work on the California campaign. And after the campaign, since it was so successful to stop the race-based affirmative action from being re-legalized in the state of California, I was asked to stay to run to help run the nonprofit organization under the name of Californians for Equal Rights Foundation. So that's my kind of involvement with the Golden State. But my home and my life are here. on the East Coast in Georgia.
Um, Maybe I should make that a little bit more clear. What I'm asking is, why did you get involved in this race-based thing? I mean, just like me, a lot of people would say, well, a race-based education, that's to help you, right? That's to help your group. What made you say, I don't want this or we shouldn't have this?
Just thinking on my own. So the California case is actually not my first case, professionally speaking. I started noticing the problems with kind of race conscious or race based uh, policies in college admissions as early as 2018 when I was working part time with a group called the Asian American Coalition for Education. And through that organization, I worked on the case that eventually made its way to the Supreme Court in 2023 when the court ruled in favor of for fair admissions to ban race based undergraduate admissions or college admissions in general. So in 2018, I started working on the case as a grassroots advocate to recruit potential students, plaintiffs, and supporting organizations in the Asian American community. And through that position, I think I got just touch with the other side of based or the race preferential industry or the diversity industry. And I think that the argument uh, for the other on the other side against race-based thinking is fascinating, and it is backed by numbers, by data, by reasoning, and that's how I started going against the kind of the cultural and political orthodoxy of race and identity balkanization.
So, for people who have no idea what people were facing in terms of admissions, are you saying that they were discriminating against Asians from coming into school?
Yes, absolutely. They were discriminating, and they were blatantly discriminating against high performing Asian students trying to get access to some of the most selective colleges in the United States. And that is why the case made its way into the US Supreme Court and finally won, because there was overwhelming evidence in support of the claim that students of certain ethnicity or race are being unfairly treated and are given higher standards for admissions, and they are being rejected as well. So that was the first case that I worked on, but that's like opening a whole universe of the ideological rot that we have been dealing with collectively and also in our individual capacity, right? It's not just college admissions, it goes so much deeper. It's in K to 12 classrooms, it's in conservative states, and it's in progressive states.
It's
I call
global.
it,
It's at least tackling the entire West. So,
yes.
maybe it's not completely global, but it's definitely all over Western civilization. Um, I wanna ask, and, excuse me if this is an invasive question, I don't mean that at all, but so some people feel that Asians are simply privileged based on the idea that they are just inherently more intelligent. Is there science to back that up? Or I've always looked at it and thought it's about work ethic. So I'd love to hear what you think.
Let me kind of preface this my answer in with a statement that I identify first and foremost as a follower of Jesus Christ, and then a mom, and then an American who happens to um, be of Asian descent. So, I've been asked questions on, this kind of pan Asian American identity or an achievement gap sort of things. And my answer has always been, I cannot think and speak on behalf of the entire uh, very diverse, inherently diverse group called Asian Americans, right? But to answer your question more directly, I have yet to see any kind of science or scientific evidence in support of like intellect superiority argument. But what I think,
You're giving out. You're a little bit clippy. So do you want to try that again?
yeah. So what I'm saying that I'm yet to see any science or of kind of intellect differentials between Asian Americans and other Americans. I tend to agree with your observation that culture, work ethics, and individual agency play a more um, important role than any kind of inherent genetic differences.
And did you grow up privileged? Did you grow up with well, when I say privileged, I want to be clear on that. What I mean by that is, did you grow up in a place with not really a lot of stress, where being able to focus on your academics was a high priority, or did you grow up kind of in poverty and work your way through?
Um, I don't think I grew up in any sort of privileged background. I'm from a single mom household, so I grew up with my mom and my maternal grandparents. We were certainly not um, well off in terms of material wealth. From I grew up in 1990s China, and basically coming out of a state run economic system, everybody was poor back then, right? And especially that was true in a single mom household or single parent household. I I didn't grow up. I didn't grow up poor either, because when everybody was equally poor, then you don't have that sense of comparison. So, but I would like to point out that even with the kind of disadvantages and lack of material wealth, my family had always emphasized the importance of a good education, and that instilled in me um, just this appreciation for education and appreciation for um, personal agency, that I can persevere and I can rise above in spite of the circumstances that I've been dealt with.
And that seems like something that you would bring to the school board if you were elected, and that is, in my opinion, desperately needed, is that can do, you can accomplish. It doesn't matter where you come from, where you start out in life.
That's
And
right. And that is actually the quintessential an American spirit too. I don't think there's anything un-American about it, but it seems like in the last 3, 4, 5 decades, we as a society have, you
I'm sorry, what?
know, the society have downplayed this foundational um, spirit of perseverance and personal agency and initiative in service uh, of the grievances on the basis of race, on the basis of other identity boxes, and that is very unfortunate.
Let's take a look at, let's move over to ethnic studies, because I do believe that ethnic studies is a huge part. It's just the curriculum, but you're right. This has been decades. I didn't know that. The first time I ever heard an anti-American sentiment, my then fourth grader came home and said, "Mom, America's not that great of a place. It's no better than anywhere else." And I was shocked that he would say that, and immediately I pulled out, some videos of people coming here from Cuba with, in makeshift rafts, and I just said, people come here for a reason, um, and I think that we were able to change some of that for him, but I do see it in school a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah.
So, what did you see in ethnic studies? Because a lot of people, when they hear ethnic studies, they think we're just learning about different cultures. Why would anybody not want to do that? So, will
Mhm.
you explain it as if I didn't know anything about it?
Ethnic studies is a Trojan horse for indoctrination and for critical race theory, which is fundamentally anti-American and illiberal. By law, ethnic is supposed to teach students to have appreciation and understanding of different cultures throughout the United States, but that is the theoretical premise of ethnic studies. But in practice, we've never seen any ethnic studies classes being taught to service this goal. Instead, most ethnic studies curriculums and actual classroom instruction practices show us that they are teaching America is and should be segregated by race and by ethnic studies or by ethnic groups. And we need to teach students that there are certain ethnic and racial groups that have been unprivileged, that have been marginalized, that have continued to suffer from systemic racism. So that is ethnic studies in practice. It is fundamentally un-American. It teaches kids to at least be in doubt about our country, and it's not just in California or Arizona. It's everywhere. The spirit that is.
Right? Um, the word I always use is oikophobia, which means the fear or loathing of your homeland, and specifically to teach our kids to loathe their homeland. Now, one thing that you said that made me pause for a moment is you said that it's intentionally teaching people to resegregate. Did I understand that correctly?
That's right. That's
So what does that mean
because
for
if you look,
biracial families?
uh-huh, because if you look at
What what does that mean for
the
biracial families?
that means I have a biracial family. Okay, I don't. My kids are not 100% Asian, and I feel that this is kind of schism, for biracial families to teach them kids to be at least confused, and then to uplift one part of their heritage at the expense of the other half.
Oh, yes. I just didn't know that it was specifically in ethnic studies because Robin DiAngelo said, "I have no answer for biracial families," and I remember hearing that when I first started to understand this stuff going, "So we're
Yeah,
supposed to hate a portion of our family?"
yeah. I mean, it's not unique to ethnic studies, but ethnic studies certainly uh, it's type of schism tendencies.
Why would anybody support it in a country that supposedly is a melting pot, that is supposedly wants to bring everybody together and say, quote unquote, "Diversity is our strength." Why then would they teach this in our schools?
Because it's easier to divide and conquer. Each kids, especially impressionable young kids, that we as a country are so steeped in the original sin of racism that uh, kid that kids or individuals of certain races and certain ethnicities are fundamentally and oppressed, then it's a way for the proponents of this kind of racial programming to divide and conquer and ultimately gain power. And it's sort of the long march through the institution, right? It's not just the classroom teaching. It's ultimately to get power and to push this kind of policies at large, not just in education, but in all sorts of public policies. In California, you see the reparation movement. They're trying to get slavery reparations only for African American Californians, enact not just in admissions, but also in housing, in healthcare, in mortgage assistance. It's everywhere.
Well, and it's going to divide people. It's going to create more hatred than is necessary. And also, I always wonder, how are they going to decide who deserves it? Like, people look at me and think, "Ooh, African American, you probably want reparations." I've only been here for 2 generations. So, I wasn't a slave. No one in my family that I know of was a slave, at least not in America.
Mhm.
So how do they decide that unless the goal really is to pit each other? I'd like to go back, and I do understand the terms that you're saying, but maybe my audience won't. So, can you explain the Long March through the institutions?
Sure. So it's actually a Marxist term that Mao Zedong in China used, but it's being used here in an American context. It explains the almost nearly half a century long journey of the far left movement on the far left to occupy institutions step by. Now they are not just in the schools, they're not just in key government positions. We have, you know, we have a lot of states that are completely like California, that's run by a one-party system. And then it's not, and aside from the public sector, then they are in Hollywood, they are in all these mainstream cultural sectors as well. They being, the far left ideas of of oppression, marginalization, racial balkanization, all these good stuff. No, quote
And
unquote.
I just most recently saw, some things about teaching kids about sexual behaviors as young as 5 years old.
That's right.
Um,
Yeah, I recently got contacted by some parents in a Bay Area elementary school district telling me that their children were forced in a mandatory program called puberty education. So it's not comprehensive sexual education, but it's called puberty education. And these elementary school kids were just forced to chant productive organs names over and over again. And then they also have a gender pronoun chant as well. So it's it this um, kind of racial Marxism being grafted onto just sexual gender confusions. It's this strain of woke mind virus is particularly dangerous.
yeah, and it's not new. Gramsci was talking about this decades ago, right? So none of this is new. I'm always reminded of the book A Brave New World and how they sexualize the kids within the first chapter of the book. They're talking about it, and a kid gets in trouble for not being sexualized, and then we see it right now. Now, I have a question for you. How do you wake up the parents? I mean, you're in a campaign right now. I ran for office a couple of years ago, and I made the decision that my campaign would be about waking people up, win or lose. I was not going to stop. I was not going to water down the message
Mhm.
because it was so important that while I had the platform, people understood what was going on. Is that how
That's right.
you stand, or
Exactly. Yeah. So I stand and firmly in proclaim the truth, which is we as a country, we are harming our kids and our next generation with all these wishy-washy woke programming that ranges from some innocent sounding, gender inclusivity stuff to just blatant over sexualization, right? In terms of gender ideology. And I started my journey here as a parent advocate a couple of years ago, and I came across a book in my daughter's kindergarten classroom. She was in kindergarten at the time, very, very young, 5 years old. She brought home a book about a crayon that is blue, but identified red. So it's a drag queen story, our favorite. And you could imagine my reaction to my daughter bringing home the book. And I contacted the teacher, I contacted the school librarian. I told them that, this is subtle messaging for gender, just transgenderism. This is not good. You should not have it. And mind you, we live in a deep red county. It's just my city that is kind of half and a half between Democrats and Republicans, or progressives and conservatives. So the school system supposedly should be conservative and pro common sense. However, they allowed that book to be introduced to kindergarteners and possibly pre-K students. When I brought attention to the book, I also wrote an article for the local newspaper calling attention to the issue. So that's how I started focusing on sort of the local issues in my local school system. I never thought that we would California, Monroe County, but
Do you have a degree
last year I
in
discovered
do you have a degree in teaching or education or anything?
I don't. My degree is in political science.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Well, that would make you very, very well qualified.
very
Um,
aware what the other side's messaging points are, because I was kind of enveloped in that in a ultra progressive academic environment for close to a decade before I obtained my degree. So I know how the other side operated. I was actually a supporter or sympathizer to,
oh, wow.
but
Okay,
then
so you
but
used to be a sympathizer uh, of woke ideology.
mhm, yes.
And does that have to do with your education in China? Were they more, would you say, like, open-minded when you were in China than they are here? Or
No, I
was it just when you got here? Go ahead, sorry.
think I was more politically attuned by the time
Okay.
that I finished my undergraduate, which was in China. And then I came here to pursue my graduate studies and then went on to do a doctorate. That's when I became sort of captured by the woke mind virus, or the movement, the racial Marxism movement in the United States. But it didn't take me too long to get out of it. I became a parent and I started working on the Harvard case, and my eyes became wide open. And once they were wide open, I can never shut my mind.
Hey, you're speaking my language. What attracted you in the first place to woke ideology?
It's I think it's what Thomas Sowell would call cosmic justice.
Okay.
As things, we inherently want to do good, right? We want to be the hero of the moment. We want to do the right thing, feel righteous, and do some good for the world. I think we have that tendency as human beings for self exaltation, and and I think it's particularly attractive to young people to think that they are carrying on a cause bigger than themselves and good for the whole world. But it's cosmic. It's not concrete. It's not thinking on behalf of flesh and blood contemporaries. It's thinking on behalf of some arbitrary groups that the other side made up to divide and conquer.
Yeah, I think it is so cruel what they've done to African Americans in terms of telling them that not only are they victims, but that their victimhood is virtuous so that they'll never let go of it. And I find that to be extremely abusive and also useful as an experiment that I believe they're now doing to all children, all the way across, because the goal is always to find why you are oppressed. They did it first with the
Hmm.
African Americans. I know that there are Hispanic studies coming out, there's Asian studies coming out. It's all to focus on why you are the victim group.
Hmm. It's dehumanizing
Oh, yes.
the beneficiaries of these, race-based policies or race-based thinking. It's telling, especially kids, that they cannot achieve on their own merits. And if they cannot achieve, it's not their fault. They should not even try. It's the system's fault. So the only way is to go against the system and always find an enemy, a common enemy, right? It's the white man, it's the so-called overrepresented, privileged Asians. It's heterosexual, normative, whatever,
Heteronormative, yeah, uh-huh.
the traditional family unit, and that ties into the this marriage between the transgender ideology and racial Marxism, because what they're trying to do ultimately is to divide the most basic unit of a functioning society, which is a traditional family. It is to demonize the marriage between the God-given marriage between a man and a woman, and then you throw in some racial stuff, you throw in some gender stuff, and poof, this is a perfect recipe for disaster for the Western civilization, and we are in the middle of it.
No, the one group that you didn't hit that I think is the most targeted today is the conservative Christian. I believe that that is the group that they're really after. All the other things just move to the side, but it's really that big thing of the conservative who believes only one thing, and that is that their rights come from God. So to believe that
Hmm.
alone means that you're a threat to all of
Hmm.
this. And I think that's ultimately where
That's
it comes down, but there's a lot of damage because progressives have that idea of, well, you gotta break some eggs to make an omelet. So to get to utopia, they've gotta do what they wanna do. Now, do you
hmm.
know much about social and emotional learning, or is your main focus ethnic studies?
I studied social emotional learning as a code name for critical race theory. I think
Oh,
that's actually what we've seen going on nationwide with social emotional learning, that it is a vehicle to basically continue and perpetuate the the far left programming and indoctrination.
um, what have you seen that gives examples of that? Can you think of anything?
Mhm. I guess some codes, social emotional learning. Supposedly it should be an innovative learning process to advance equity, personalized, individualized progress, right? But in reality, I think it is an empirical and untested model for social justice, identity politics, and critical race theory. So I can quote some direct language from the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, CASL, which is a big organizational vehicle or proponent of SEL. In 2020, in an article that's entitled "What is SEL?" Castle argues, and I quote, "SEL can help address various forms of inequity and empower young people and adults to co-create thriving schools and contribute to safe, healthy, and just communities," unquote. And then also from Castle, they also wrote in a different article on SEL, and I quote, "If we don't apply a racial equity lens, abolitionist lens, and others to racial justice, as you name it, very easily SEL becomes white supremacy with a hug, because what happens is SEL is being used as another way to distinguish Black and brown children and everyone else," unquote. So basically, this second quote, is kind of loaded, right? It's saying that if you need to attach social justice, racial equity, and abolitionism to SEL so that it does not become co-opted by the big bad wolf called white supremacy.
So, can you explain abolitionism today?
Abolitionism basically is it is a pedagogical concept to racially segregate students, to teach them the ongoing harms of slavery in the United in order to promote this racial agenda.
Right. So, in other words, kids are supposed to constantly think about slavery, even though it's been racial slavery, specifically against African Americans, has been over for about 200 years.
That's
But
right.
we're still supposed to constantly focus on that.
Yeah.
And which puts them, I would think, in a state of paranoia, constant distrust, and bitterness.
Mm-hmm. That's right. So abolitionism in a historical context was a movement to call to an immediate end to chattel slavery in the
Right.
United States, right? But we are in 2026 now, and there is still a very vocal group of educators and activists crying out for abolitionism. What does it tell you?
I think they want to get rid of more than I mean, they believe that anything about Western civilization is slavery,
Mm-hmm.
which what a slap in the face to the people who actually lived through it, you know? Like the things that we have today, people would have never believed possible that their grandchildren would have it, or that the people who came over here who were never slaves would would have that kind of equality.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm just looking at some of these things. The only way to go against a system is to join another system. What do you think about that? The only way to go against one system is to join another system.
It's a
Do you have any
dangerous.
thoughts?
So it is basically, it's a dangerous word salad. It's telling people, especially young kids, that our system is not working. The system that is predicated on the Constitution and on our God-given rights of liberty, justice, and equality is not working. It is corrupt. It is racially unjust. It needs to be completely destroyed to accommodate a system that has never been tried and succeed, right? Because we see
I'm
it.
laughing because I had a student tell me that yesterday. Real socialism hasn't been tried yet. When the good people are in charge, it'll be great. like, like
Well,
that.
that's at best wishful thinking, right? But
Yeah.
it's dangerous thinking, because if you look at just the 20th century and early 21st century, China, North Korea, Venezuela, Cuba, even large portions of Latin America before before the 1960s.
Right.
You look at labor movements, give me an example that socialism has been tried and succeeded, because you can't find any.
Yeah. No, and you definitely can't find anything. I mean, a lot of people will say Sweden, right? Um, but you can't find a system where they just enforced socialism that isn't, well, even the homogeny argument, um, because they destroyed it when they opened up their borders.
Right.
But you can't find a system that hasn't required the deaths of millions of people.
That's
That's
right.
um,
And
go ahead.
the Nordic of social capitalism in in countries like Sweden and other Nordic countries,
Right.
it is too soon to tell whether it has succeeded. And the fact that you mentioned that the system has only been experimented in largely racially homogeneous societies is just that we should probably not try it in a naturally diverse society like and large society like the United States.
Well, especially one in which people have been groomed to be divided because every group tends to put their own self-interest first.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah,
something that I've noticed.
it becomes a zero sum game, and the opposite side of preference is and has always been discrimination. You cannot get to a point of treating certain um, so-called underprivileged, underrepresented groups with differences without harming the rest of the society. And it should not be like this.
Right. I don't understand how people are wrapping their minds around treating people. The whole when I saw the wheel of privilege and power the very first time, and I saw that it required pushing other people out, I just thought, how in the world would anyone, any decent person be okay with this? And what's been crazy to me is that a whole bunch of people who support social and emotional learning are the people who are okay with this. And all I can think of is it looks like a cult. Because
Mhm.
you can't have just the simple rational to look at that wheel and go, "Whoa, we're supposed to kick people out? People who've done nothing wrong, people who've barely gotten their lives started." We're talking, you know, 8-year-old boys, and we're supposed to push them out to the margins. And I watched that. We had a program called Girls on the Run, where the girls were they got to go outside and run while the boys had to sit in class and stare out the window and wonder why the girls got to run and have pizza and get bling, and they weren't allowed any of those things. And I watched a group of boys, because I have a son, and I watched a group of boys come in and say, "How come we don't get to do that?" So it starts it early, and it's hard to believe that the people who've created the curriculum don't know what they're doing.
Mhm. I don't believe that they don't know what they're doing. I think at least the people on the top, the ideologues and the industry consultants, I call them snake oil salesmen, they know very well what they're doing, and they don't care about the consequences for the individuals, for the young people, for the parents, and for the country as a whole. And if you look at just this whole the entire, it's almost a conspiracy, but it is not. The same people that are behind social emotional learning are the same people that uh, chanted Black Lives Matter, that supported this whole racial reckoning thing that burned down cities in 2020, that supported of racial justice and equity. And these are the same people that are attacking the very foundation of our country, of our system that has worked beautifully for the last 250 years. They are the ones who are trying to drive out conservative Christians. They're trying to demonize the traditional family unit, and they're trying to divide the kids against their parents. So it's really scary when you think about this whole system design of this religion. And these are the same people that want desperately the so-called separation of church and state. They twist the doctrine into taking any sort of, including the Christian foundation of our nation, from any classroom. Okay, they are twisting the doctrine into taking the church out of the state. But the beginning, when Thomason wrote about the doctrine, it's about taking the state, taking the government out of churches, so we don't have a Church of England in America. But these people intentionally mixing up the argument to confuse people, so that whenever we talk about the Constitution, whenever we talk about the Judeo-Christian foundation, we become the bad people. We become, oh, you guys just want to bring Christianity back into the mainstream. You just want to teach the Bible in schools. But that's,
But wouldn't you say
the same people
that
that are behind.
you froze up again?
No, go
Okay,
ahead.
wouldn't you say that that this is a new religion in our schools, because it's an ideology built by somebody, ultimately, if you go all the way back to Karl Marx. And I'm saying this because I've done the research. I know where the Fetzer Institute comes from. I know what he follows. He follows the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama is a Marxist. Um, and they throw this into our schools. They throw things like chanting, they throw things like yoga into the schools. And whether you appreciate it or not, some people won't. Some people will find it against their religious values. It seems to me that schools would do better off, especially public schools, being neutral on these subjects. We have kids who are graduating and can't read, but yet they know how to be an ally.
Mhm.
Um, but I just don't believe they really want the separation of church and state. They want the state to become the new religion.
That's right. Yeah, and I think that the the just this new age religious practicing being packaged as something cool and mysterious, in public schools, is at least a distraction from the learning crisis that we are confronted with. Kids cannot do math at a grade level. I think in my state, it's about 40% of K 12 students in Georgia that are not proficient in math at their current grade level. And then kids are illiterate in terms of civic education, in terms of English language arts. So these kind of like overtly ideological programs are a distraction at best, but they also uh, demonstrate the apparent hypocrisy of these people, who want to push out Christianity and any mentioning of our country's Judeo-Christian foundation, which is a historical fact. It is not teaching the Bible, right? But
Right.
the same kind of people who they want to push their own religion in.
Oh no, we have that exact thing going on in Utah right now. Can we teach it as a historical fact? And people are like, only if you allow the book of Satan. But the thing is the founding fathers weren't reading the book of Satan.
Hmm.
So yeah, I absolutely believe that we should go as far as what they did and no further. We have to be factual in our education. We have to be factual in history. Um, what do you see as um what do you think that you can bring to a school board?
I can bring I can bring awareness on very important issues that are being um, smuggled into a very conservative town, I can bring courage. And if I don't win, at least I put these people on notice. I expose them. I let them know that I'm onto you guys, and this is not right. This is not right that you're trying to groom our children as early as kindergarten. It's not right that you are trying to introduce transgenderism in under the name of gender inclusion or culture. It's not right. It's grooming.
Another word that, I think it's important that people hear and understand is when you hear safe schools, you are talking about LGBTQ. And that's what it means when somebody is running for office and they say, "I support safe schools."
Mhm.
There it's a signal to the people, and it also doesn't mean what you think it means. It does not mean locking down schools and keeping kids safe.
No, it's virtue signaling, and it's a code name for transgender ideology and for an intent to promote this system wide. And also, there's another code name called "No Place for Hate." So a lot of
Mhm.
that up, in terms of bumper stickers or even classroom door posters.
Right.
It's that is vice signaling. That's telling people that I am the justice warrior here. I don't promote any sort of racial hate or racial tensions or hate or bigotry against transgender people or kids that identify as such. But you guys, if you don't put up a poster like this, then you're allowing hate to happen, right?
Well, and I think they're also saying, "But I do hate your kids."
Right.
That's what I've seen kids experience, is that they walk into
Hmm.
including, like, sweet little gay kids will walk into a classroom and they'll just be like, "Why does my gender why does who I'm attracted to matter to my teacher? It's not your business."
Hmm.
And so there's that. Um, have you ever been or what are your thoughts on what's going on with the SPLC?
Yeah, make that up, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think I read a report that a significant percentage of its budget went towards funding the KKK. So, and
Right,
a couple of years ago, they circulated a hate map that included groups pro parental rights groups like Moms for Liberty, right?
right.
And that I think that they are peddlers of hate. They're peddlers of grievances. They're grifters, and they deserve to be caught out. They deserve to be investigated.
Well, and they have a curriculum, called Teaching for Social Justice,
Yes. Yeah.
and it's in many of our schools. So
Mhm.
I would highly recommend that people go and look at that because, um, I don't think that that they've left a rock untouched. So your advocate is the good teacher, right? Your advocate is the teacher who goes, "I don't want any of this." The people who walk up and say, "Thank you for running. Please get this out of my school." Those are
Mhm.
your advocates. But the policy and the curriculum is something that you can only fight if you have a good school board member.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think in small towns like here, it's easy for school board members to just be a revolving door
Yeah.
for bureaucracy. But the problem is that the bureaucracy, even one that is headed by conservatives, can be hollowed out by teacher activists. And you need eternal vigilance, even especially in conservative areas that are considered safe or untouched by the mind virus, but it's already here. It has been here, and I'm just calling them out, win or lose.
Let's you use the word courage. You said you bring courage. What have you had to do so far that has tested your courage?
I am running against an incumbent in what is considered a majority Black neighborhood, and there has not been a conservative or non-progressive candidate that has won the school board elections in the last 40 years. So it certainly takes a lot of courage and conviction to run as a conservative. And I'm running unapologetically as a conservative, as a Christian, and as a mom on fire against gender ideology in schools. So I think that's kind of like the structural or the contextual premise of my campaign. But also, since I started running, I've been writing articles and talking to people about my platform, about my campaign, with my messages. And I've been called out. I've been asked why I want to ban books, why I want to LGBTQ students, why I want to advance white supremacy. And I mean, look at me. Why would I want to advance that, right? First and foremost. And then book banning is such a dishonest narrative and lie pushed by the teachers union to smear our good intentions to curate library books so that they are age appropriate. I don't want to ban books. You can buy any of these poem books on Amazon, in Barnes and Noble, online, and anywhere in the marketplace, but just not in public schools funded by taxpayers. I think that age appropriateness is an important criteria, just like a kindergarten classroom should not have rated R movies, right? It's the same concept.
I think it's very important to look at the fact that many of these advocates are regularly getting arrested for inappropriate relationships with children. And part of that is because when you get to a point where there is no truth but power, or as the Bolsheviks said, there is no God, so there's nothing to be accountable to,
Mhm.
or relativism, where a kid is just a future consenting adult.
Mhm.
All of that makes sense. I mean, it's vile, but it makes sense on why it's happening. Now,
Mhm.
here's the thing about books. There's another argument for the books, and that is that it's not just um, it's not just removing inappropriate books, but there's only so many spaces on these shelves, right? I used to work in the school library, and there's only so many spaces on these shelves. Why wouldn't we fill them with the best, most hopeful books for these kids? And why do the kids need why must it always be looking through a mirror instead of, you know, uh, instead of looking at the world outside? Let me ask you this question. What do you say when people say diversity is our strength?
It is, what does that even mean? We are naturally diverse. We were diverse 250 years ago. We were diverse even before our independence. Diversity is like gravity. You're chanting for gravity. We don't need to chant for that. What does that mean, right? Are you going for racial skin color diversity? Or are you going for viewpoint diversity? There's just so much to unpack here, and it becomes an amorphous, just pleasantry that means nothing at best, but directs people into a cult of racial thinking.
And lastly, what do you think kids need?
They need good curriculum. They need common sense. They need critical thinking. Most importantly, they need good teachers and parents who are aware of the issues, who are supportive of their learning and who are willing to stand up to this to this cabal of Marxists and say no.
Well, is there anything else that you want to get across before we wrap?
I think I'm good, but I'm so appreciative of the fact that we get to talk today and it's been a very productive conversation.
Yeah, I think that you're a bigger hero than you think you are. I mean, you only spoke about the school board, but I think that the amount of I mean, the battle being in the battle since 2020, or I think before then, and, the amount of hate I think that it takes, that ability to let it kind of I don't know if you do. I'm not so good at letting it roll off my shoulders. I usually stand in the shower and cry. So and I can't wait for Sunday to get back to church. Is generally how I feel, but
Remember,
I just
it's not about
what'd you
us.
say?
No, I said
What?
just remember, can you hear me?
Uh-huh, go ahead.
It's not about us. This is not about me. Where we are fighting God's battle, and it
Yeah,
is
yeah,
nation or doing the right thing for our children, for our families. It's for His glory ultimately, and it's not about us. I have just
right.
right anger about what has been going on in our country, and I want to do something about it. And I know there are many more who are like me. And if I serve a small role of waking them up, then I win.
And I love that. Somebody just said, "I hope she wins." And that's exactly it. I don't know if you've ever seen Julie Bailing's film, but in it, it is a collection of people who are speaking up. She did Beneath Sheep's Clothing, and I got to sit in a row with a bunch of people who were the people who speak up and stand out. And to
Right.
me, it reminded me of, you know, the battle where you're going to be standing there with God and,
Mhm.
in the battle. And it felt good. It felt right. And I think that's the most important thing is that you continuously do what's right.
Yes,
So,
and thing, doing the right
thank
thing.
you. Oh, go
Um,
ahead.
I said doing the right thing sometimes it's not easy. It's the most difficult thing, but you will feel in your heart and in your soul that this is the right thing to do, which is if you know the truth, and if you know what is against the truth. What are those wolves in sheep's clothing? Call them out, expose the darkness, because the darkness cannot overcome the light. And by the way,
Absolutely.
it's already won.
Absolutely. Well, I have loved speaking with you, and I'm glad that this has finally happened. I'm gonna let you go. I can hear your kiddos in the back, and I will send you over some clips.
Yes, thank you so much,
Thank you
Karen.
so
I
much.
look forward
Bye-bye.
to
Oh,
talking to you in the future.
yes, that would be great. Thank you. Bye-bye.